All right, let's dive into something that really blurs the line between what we think of as dream and reality. I mean, what if your mind could actually leave your body and just travel on its own? That, right there, is the core idea behind what's called astral projection.
It's a huge question, right? And it sits right at this fascinating intersection of spirituality, psychology, and of course, science. So, is it a real spiritual event, a trick of the brain, or something else entirely? That's what we're going to dig into. What people who experience this say it's like, and what science has to say about it all. Okay, so first things first, let's get a clear definition. When we talk about astral projection, we're talking about an intentional out-of-body experience. That's the key word here, intentional. The whole idea is that a part of your consciousness, this astral body, actually separates from your physical body and goes off to explore a totally different realm, which people call the astral plane.
But, to really get where this idea fits in today, we actually have to go back and look at its origins. And they're kind of surprising, because the term itself, it's way more modern than the idea it's describing.
Yeah, seriously. Even though the experience of, soul travel is ancient, the actual phrase astral projection, that was really made popular back in the late 1800s by a group called the Theosophists. They were this kind of spiritual movement that mixed philosophy and mysticism. But the thing is, the basic concept they were talking about, you can find that way, way earlier in history.
And it's wild, because once you start looking for this idea, you start seeing it pop up everywhere. It's not just from one place. This is a concept with deep, global roots.
I mean, just look at this. It really shows you how universal the core idea is. You've got ancient Egypt, where the soul, or Ba, could hover outside the body. You go to ancient India, and Hindu scriptures talk about a subtle body for travel. In Taoist traditions, they had practices to create a whole energy body just for this purpose. And even in Japanese mythology, there's the Ikiryo, the soul of a living person that can appear somewhere else. See? Different names, different cultures, but the concept is just strikingly similar.
Okay, so we've got the history, we've got the definitions. But what's it actually like? What does the experience feel like according to the people who say they can do it?
Well, one of the most common things you'll hear about in these accounts is something called the silver cord. It's described as this kind of psychic lifeline, a tether that connects the traveling astral body all the way back to the physical one. It's what supposedly makes sure you can always get back safely. Some people have even pointed to a passage in the book of Ecclesiastes in the Bible as a possible metaphor for it.
Now, this is really interesting because practitioners actually make a distinction between two different types of travel. First, there's etheric travel. Think of this as being out of your body, but still here in the physical world. You're visiting real people and places that exist right now. But then you have astral travel. That's the big one. That's a journey to totally non-physical realms. We're talking heavens, hells, other planes of existence, places where time and space might not even work the way we understand them.
And this quote from the spiritual teacher Meher Baba really gets to the heart of why people do this. He said you can basically take off your physical body as if it were a cloak. For believers, it's not just about, cosmic tourism. It's a serious tool for spiritual growth. It's a way to directly experience the idea that your consciousness is so much more than just your physical body.
And when you're journeying into that deeper reality, one of the most famous destinations people talk about is the Akashic Records. The easiest way to think about it is like a spiritual internet. It's supposedly this universal library that contains every piece of knowledge, every thought, every event that has ever happened, all stored up. And some believe you can actually access it on the astral plane.
All right, we've really dug into the belief systems, the personal stories, which are incredibly powerful. But now it's time to, pivot. We need to ask a totally different kind of question.
So what does science say about all this?
Well, from the perspective of mainstream science, the answer is pretty unambiguous. Right now, there's zero scientific evidence that consciousness can operate separately from the brain. The whole idea that someone can consciously leave their body and then come back with verifiable information, that's just never been proven in controlled, repeatable experiments.
Okay, so if it's not your spirit leaving your body, then what's going on? How does science explain these experiences that feel so real? Well, there are a bunch of neurological and psychological explanations. Things like hallucinations or vivid lucid dreams. The ones where you're aware you're dreaming and can even control what's happening. There's also something called false awakenings, where you dream that you've woken up. Any of these could create an incredibly powerful illusion of being somewhere but outside of your own body.
And because there's no objective evidence, and because it relies almost entirely on personal stories, the scientific community classifies astral projection as a pseudoscience. Now, that doesn't mean the experiences aren't real to the person having them. Of course they are.
It just means the explanation for those experiences isn't seen as being based on the scientific method. This quote from the skeptic Robert Todd Carroll kind of nails the core problem for scientists. He points out that the evidence is all anecdotal. It's just personal testimonials, people saying, "I experience being out of my body." And while those stories can be incredibly compelling, they just aren't verifiable data. There's no scientific way to check if someone was really out of their body or if they were just having an incredibly intense internal mental experience.
So here we are. We're left with two totally different ways of looking at the very same phenomenon. On one side, you have a profound spiritual journey, and on the other, a complex neurological illusion.
And to really understand the power of that personal experience, just listen to this story from Helen Keller. I mean, think about it. Despite not being able to see or hear, she described an experience that was so vivid, she was absolutely convinced that her spirit had traveled all the way to Athens. For her, that internal feeling was undeniable proof that her consciousness was more than just her physical senses.
And that really brings us right to the heart of this whole debate, doesn't it? On one hand, you have science, which demands objective, verifiable proof. And in this case, it's just not there. But on the other hand, you have the sheer power of subjective experience. And for countless people, for centuries, that personal experience has been more than enough proof to shape their entire worldview.
So that leaves us with the ultimate question, right? Is consciousness something we can explore beyond our bodies? Or is it the most amazing, most profound illusion that's created within them? The answer, it seems, really does depend on where you decide to look.